All right, all right. Welcome to the world-famous Tipitinas. Thank you to Tipitinas for the use of space and Nugs.net for the usage of the equipment we are using tonight. Check out the great content they have on Nugs.net. They've been bringing live music to fans for over 25 years, so here's to the next 25. Thank you, Nugs. And if you are interested in corporate sponsorship of this program, please reach out to info@tipitinas.com. We'd be happy to improve it in any way possible, and money is what will do that. I have a very special guest tonight, and I wrote this intro last night. I read it again this morning just to make sure I was comfortable with it. Here we go. I hope it's good. My guest this evening is a musician. Perhaps the only musician I know that was brought to this world with no chance of ever having any likely career other than musician. Raised while blazing the dirt roads with his family, but brazed in New Orleans' sweatiest music halls. He is the living prototype of what a musician should be on stage and off. Always in perfect sync and harmony with fellow performers, fans, friends, and family. He's a man of great humor, a big heart, tremendous talent, and a passion for live performance that must literally be mopped from the stage after he performs. He is proof that a great musician is only a great musician if he's a great person first. Ironically, if there was ever a career path he would have pursued other than musician, I have no doubt that he would have excelled in that field as well. Perhaps the only job he does better than musician is father. Please help me welcome André Bohren, a.k.a. Dirty Johnny, a.k.a. Deranger Danger, a.k.a. The Golden Child.
Oh, man. Thank you, Tank.
Is that sweet?
Beautiful.
I've never had to write an intro quite like that before. I just thought I'd take a stab. I was hoping it wouldn't be too cheesy, but I can't express how dear you are to my heart and to the people that know you for sure.
Thank you very much.
Did I leave out any aliases? Sorry to cut you off. What do we have? Dirty Johnny, Deranger Danger, The Golden Child. Is there anything else?
I think, well, there's when I answer business emails from Rory Danger, I do that as Stranger Danger.
Stranger Danger? That's pretty good.
That gives me another persona to zero in on when I'm responding to like the 4 emails that we've gotten that needed responding to, you know.
It's a phenomenal project for sure. I like Stranger Danger though. Yeah. That's good.
It was right there. It was right there.
He probably works out of the same office as like Jerry Morris or something.
yeah, exactly.
Sure. That's an inside joke.
Just down the hall.
Yeah. You are in the band Rory Danger and the Danger Dangers. You are in many projects, actually. Walrus, Whippersnappers, Chillins, countless projects. But most importantly, and near and dearest to my heart, the greatest band in the history of all time, Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes, André Bohren.
Yeah, well, that's the band that I helped start some years ago. 18.
It's the one probably keeps you the busiest year in year out.
Yeah. That is that's my band.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that not solely my band, but when people ask me who I play with,
it's your number one band.
That's the number one, yeah.
We'll get into plenty of that. Don't worry. I got plenty of things to ask and talk about. Let's talk about the early years. What were your earliest musical influences?
Well, when I was a little baby until I was like 4, my parents lived in New Orleans East on Hain Boulevard, sort of across from the airport out there.
Okay.
And there was our little shack, you know, not a whole lot of money in those days. There was our house, then there was a shed in between the houses, and the next house over was John Magny's house from the Subdudes. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it was Little Queenie and the Percolators was the band that was happening. And so all of the rehearsals for that would happen in the shed in between the houses. And
how old were you at this point?
I was born when we lived in that house. So
okay.
So
all right.
First, 3 or 4 years.
All right.
Was in that house, and then so all of the Percolators stuff that happened, and any band projects that my dad had. He was mostly a soloist, but he played gigs he had a gig with James Booker that I have a rehearsal tape of.
I want to ask you about some of these tapes as well.
Go ahead. A lot of tapes. There's a lot of tapes.
Yes.
And this rehearsal tape with Booker was in this space, in this shed between our houses, and you can hear it. I think Bunny Matthews was on drums.
No kidding.
For this, it was like a one gig, and Booker played all different songs at the gig from what they rehearsed. So it was not a great experience for
Where
anybody.
was the gig?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I'm
all
not
right.
sure.
I'd
The
be
rehearsal
interested to know
was the rehearsal was in the shed between our houses.
It was probably better than the gig.
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, I guess to answer that, the first music that I was exposed to, live music wise, was anything that happened in that shed. You know, which was like a lot of very cool music from the late 70s, early 80s New Orleans scene. You know.
Well, I mean, Lil Queenie and the Percolators was huge, and the Subdudes, obviously. And you mentioned your father. Obviously, the world became a much sadder place last year when you lost your father. He was a real-life roots rock and roll troubadour, superhero kind of guy. So what's his origin story?
Well, he's from Wyoming originally, musical mecca of Casper, Wyoming.
Yeah, you know, you don't stop hearing about all the great music coming from Casper,
that's right.
Wyoming.
That's right. He was raised in a Baptist singing Baptist family.
Okay.
So, you know, he sang with his family and learned how to sing harmony really well. And then when he was a teenager, he started hearing blues and folk music on the radio, and that just took him, you know. Yeah. And so the day he graduated high school, he left Wyoming, went to Denver, met all these people, and, you know, just started expanding on his blues and folk stuff. And
most people that were playing folk probably around that time were probably trying to emulate Bob Dylan, I would assume. But he was not doing that.
Dylan was his number one.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know that he really counted him as his number one in real time, like as it happened, you know. Okay. He was certainly aware of him.
Certainly. Yeah.
But I think the blues was the biggest thing at that point for him, you know. Not like the Stevie Ray Vaughan, not electric blues, you know. We're talking about like you know, Mississippi John Hurt and Blind Blake and like the Piedmont blues, the finger picking blues stuff. Son House, you know, I mean all the I actually just inherited his blues album and CD collection. So
okay, that's pretty.
I'm looking forward to digging through that.
It's probably very deep.
There's a lot of really cool and very obscure, amazing music, you know.
Tell me a little bit about Dirt Road Blues.
Well, so that was sort of an educational thing that he put together.
Yeah, the video is on YouTube for anyone. There is a video of him performing this.
Down the Dirt Road Blues. Yeah. Spencer Bohren. I don't even know if we mentioned that. Spencer Bohren.
Spencer Bohren is your father's name. Did we say that?
I don't know. If we
said that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was his way of tracing the path of one song.
Yeah.
You know, that started maybe as a field song. You know, and then somebody walking by would hear it and bring it home and bring it to the next
How did he
county
do
over.
that research? How did he dig into and really find out?
I think that was something that he'd probably been thinking about for a long time. I mean, he was definitely into the history of stuff like that. You know, like he was really fascinated by, you know, you can hear a song that is done in a early country recording that is the same song
but seemingly
but
completely
totally different.
Yeah.
But like somewhere along the line, you know, there's no internet, there's no records, there's no, you know, it's not like
it's being
wide
passed
stuff
along region to region.
Right. So and even within the blues world, you know, somebody from the Carolinas would do the same song very differently from somebody from Texas, but it's clearly the same song.
Yeah,
you know?
it's just the progression of how a song can grow and build over time. I've never seen an example kind of walked through with someone playing it so you can hear the sounds of the original, just like someone kind of singing it to themselves.
Right.
And then when the very first commercial guitar becomes available, someone
changes it
starts
again
to change it a little bit.
And then the Stones get their hands on it or whatever.
It goes here, it goes there. It
right.
becomes, you know, electric or steel. You know, it's all over the place. I highly suggest anyone who hasn't seen that to look it up because it's extremely educational. I've never seen anything in depth about the growth of one song over the course of 100+ years.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and you know, he was really he would really deep dive in the history of stuff. You know, like to answer your question, you don't know if he was the most studious person in this stuff. He absolutely was, and like he had a wealth of knowledge about, you know, about the people that as much information about the people who recorded the song or who he would hear singing it. You know, he would definitely, find out as much as he could about all of that.
Well, it's something else that I find pretty interesting, considering what a student of music he was. And he was always, as an adult, a professional musician. Did he ever have any other careers?
No.
No.
With the exception of a brief stint when we first moved back to New Orleans. My family moved back here after years not here in 97. And he had a hard time, like a lot of his, like he was doing a lot of gigs in Europe, and a lot of those gigs weren't happening at the time, so he didn't have, and he was trying to get his foot back in the door in the New Orleans scene.
How do you market yourself in the 90s when you're playing roots rock, blues, folk music,
as a soloist,
Yes.
So anyway, he thought to himself, well, I play music, what else do I do? And it's like, well, I drive. I do a lot of driving. So he actually got his limo license and drove limos for I don't know, 6 months or something. That's
a good side gig, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, sure. it was well within his skill set. He's an excellent driver. You should see him park. You should see him park a trailer.
Yeah. We'll get into
surgical.
that for sure. With a Bel Air and an Airstream.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, he was such a student of music, and he has 14 albums. Is that correct? About 14, over a dozen.
I think it was closer to 20.
But he didn't actually have a recorded album until he was in his 30s.
Right. He didn't start recording until he was 33 or 34 maybe.
Okay. Was there a reason why he stayed out of the studio?
Yeah, well, yes. He was always under the impression that, the real music, the real stuff happened live and in person.
I can agree with that in a large sense.
I think that was sort of his outlook, but I think money was also a very big factor in that. 'Cause
recording is not free.
It's not free. And my parents were having kids, and that's not free either. So
no, it certainly is not.
But he came out swinging with. I mean, his first record is "Born in a Biscayne," and it's one of my absolute favorite records of his. It's he got Dr. John on it. He got Eric Traub's on it. The band is killer. The band is actually the Percolators.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that back around.
Kenny Blevins on drums and Ricky Cortez, who was the Percolators bass player by the end. John Mooney produced it. I mean, it's a stacked record. Tommy Malone's on the record.
Tommy Malone is a shredder.
And Dr. John played on a couple of songs. My favorite of which is the Coasters song, "Shopping for Clothes."
Yeah.
And instead of Dr. John's not playing on that, he is the voice of the salesman. So it's my dad going in, doing his, he's talking about, I went shopping for a suit, and then Mac says, "What can I do for you?" He's haggling with the salesman. It's great.
To put his voice on your album is definitely kind of like a bucket list type of thing.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
But he's not singing. Which makes it great.
Doesn't matter.
It's not like you don't necessarily hear it and think that's Dr. John. It's just. You hear it and it's like, that's an amazing voice.
Well, that's not the only Dr. John connection. What is the origin of a Dr. John coexistence with Spencer Bohren?
So in the early and mid 70s, my dad was in Boulder, Colorado, and he had a band called Gone Johnson, and they opened for Dr. John. They opened a couple of shows for Dr. John
in Boulder.
All right. And he was full night tripper.
Yeah, this was, what year was this? Probably 71, 72?
70. This was maybe a couple years after that. I think this was 70, I don't know, 74, 75 maybe.
Okay. But he's still coming out and doing the pixie dust.
It was just wild, like my dad never seen anything like that, and he heard, I guess Mac told him all about New Orleans and the Mardi Gras Indians, and, which he was costuming, as he was taking a lot from that,
absolutely
visually, and so he told my dad about where that came from, and my dad knew about Professor Longhair, but Mac told him more about him, and so then a year later, my folks were just traveling. They were traveling, kind of playing solo gigs. My dad was doing solo gigs, and they were just kind of seeing what they were on an adventure, and they wound up in New Orleans, and they saw a flyer for Professor Longhair. And remembering that what Mac had said, like, you got to see him.
Yeah.
They came, and the show was actually at the 501 Club.
Well, I think that's nearby here.
Yeah,
if I'm
it's
not
very
mistaken.
close.
Is that
It's very
true?
close to here.
Oh, it's here. Got it. Okay.
And the flyer said 9 o'clock, Professor Longhair. So they showed up at 9 o'clock, and there's nobody here. And the bartender is they're getting impatient because there's nobody here, and they paid their cover, and the bartender's just hanging out with them, and he keeps saying just wait, just hang on, and at midnight, the band comes rolling in, and as my dad would always tell the story, he's like, within 10 minutes, which of course, no way within 10 minutes of the band rolling in are they playing, but after you wait for 4 hours,
yeah,
and
you're sticking
whatever,
around for hours. Yeah.
And the impact was just it went from 0 to 60 with Fess's band just rocking. My mom would talk about seeing a cop in here with the gun like dancing his ass off, and the gun is like slapping against slapping against his hip while he's dancing, and just sounded they were hooked. It was so Mac was really their introduction to New Orleans.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal story. I can't believe very few people have something quite so personal that ended up bringing them here and staying here.
Yeah.
Because of it. Tell me a little bit about what life was like in the family dynamic growing up. More specifically, what's it like being brought up in an Airstream trailer, I guess?
Well, so when I was 4, my little sister was born, so that made 3 kids, and I have an older brother. Once my little sister was born, my dad's road trip, he was on tour. He would do a lot of solo touring with his manager at the time, Ricky Castrillo.
Ricky was his manager?
Ricky was his manager, yeah.
Former employee and legendary icon of Tipitina's past, for sure.
Yeah, Ricky was his manager for a while. So anyway, he was doing these solo tours and just away from the family, And my mom was a midwife at the time, and she was delivering babies, a lot of babies. Some of the people that she delivered babies for were circus folk. They owned elephants. Okay. And they ran the elephants exhibit at the zoo. Those were their elephants.
Is the zoo hiring circus people to take care of their animals?
I don't know, but these guys were Frank Murray,
Okay.
Frank Murray, and they also, they worked for the Big Apple Circus.
All right.
And they're legit
real circus
folks, and they own elephants, and so my mom delivered a baby for him, and was, I guess, they were friends with them, and at some point the topic came up, how do you make it work with all the travel and so they just walked my parents through it. They're like, well, you get this kind of car, you put it in, you make sure it's got this kind of engine in it, and you get a trailer, and you hit the road with the family. And so my parents did, and they bought a 27-foot Airstream and a 1955 Chevy 4-door Bel Air, and put a new engine in it, a bigger engine that would pull the...
You could accommodate a 27-foot Airstream.
Yeah. And we hit the road in 1984. So when I was 4 years old, and my older brother was 6.5, and my sister was 1, and we hit the road for 7 years.
No schooling or anything.
My mom homeschooled.
Homeschooling in a trailer.
She figured, as she puts it, she said, I figured I know more than a 6-year-old, so it wasn't like an official curriculum, but she taught us. She found that kids are pretty curious about reading around the time that you're taught how to read, and about math, and
Yeah, if you know how to influence and nurture certain aspects of what childhood is developing interest in,
and
probably makes it a lot easier.
We were always in interesting places, and she did all the booking too for the tours. So
so she could probably make school trips out of a trip to the Midwest or something like
absolutely.
that.
We were always learning stuff. My mom was the real hero of that whole operation. My dad would play the gigs and drive, and my mom would keep the whole thing going. She knew where every payphone, because it was all by payphone too. She knew every laundromat with a payphone.
Wow.
On every back road, because it was all the Chevy couldn't go over 55 miles an hour.
Yeah, you're right in the small.
So we were in back roads,
farm to markets. Yeah.
Which is that's the way to see the country too.
Yes.
The interstate is you know.
Sanitized,
It'll
bland,
get you
and
there.
boring.
It'll get you there.
It'll
for
get
sure.
you there, but there's no.
But the back roads
intrigue
are where it's at. So she kept it all on the road. You know, when we were traveling, I was a visual artist. That was my thing then. I would draw pencil on paper and go through reams of paper.
Oh.
I hadn't started playing music yet. I definitely had an obsession with early 50s rock and roll.
I wanted to ask you that because I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is accurate. Your earliest musical interests are 50s rock and roll and Peruvian pan flute music.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah. Well,
that's not a joke. That's real.
Apparently, I'm told when I was a little baby, or maybe when I was, I don't know, one and a half or two, I wouldn't do anything like go to bed or take a bath or anything like that unless Peruvian flute music was playing.
Interesting.
My mom had they had a record of flute music. She also told me that when I was 8 or 9 months old, the record that would put me to sleep most successfully was Sgt. Pepper.
Interesting. You've become quite the Beatles aficionado.
I love the Beatles. Yeah, I mean that's they're my number one band. So.
I would have to venture to say that you and your cohorts of Johnny Sketch are a bit of a Beatles jukebox, actually. I've seen you play no less than 30 different Beatles
We
tunes.
dabble.
Yeah. But seemingly you can just throw one out there, and one of you guys knows how to play it start to finish at the very least.
Yeah. There's. I mean, it's one of the great catalogs of music, you know.
I want to jump back to talk about when your family was in New Orleans originally, when Spencer and your mother Marilyn came in, and early years here at Tipitina's and his relationship with this building.
Yeah. So at some point, my dad, my parents became very good friends with Bunny and Lyle Matthews, and part of that was Bunny. I mean, the scene from what I understand, the scene in the late '70s here, there was a lot of action, but tips wasn't a thing yet.
I think something that helps make this place iconic is that it was a group of weirdos that were making.
It was
a music
absolutely
club.
a bunch of weirdos,
and it wasn't just some guy that has some cash enough to open up a bar.
No. This was like, it was a group of weirdos that would have been doing what ended up happening at Tipitina's anyway.
Yeah, they
but
were doing it before.
They needed a place, so they
were hosting Gator Balls and all those other things.
Right.
Yeah,
and so my dad was in on all of that. You know, he was good friends with Bunny. I think they went to see the Sex Pistols in Baton Rouge. Okay. They saw the Sex Pistols. They saw one of the 5 gigs that the Sex Pistols did before they imploded.
Yeah.
You know, and they would feed. I don't know if you know Bunny's book, the cartoon book of. For sure is what it's called.
I haven't seen the book.
Dialogue.
I'm familiar with a lot of his art, obviously.
It's actual dialogue heard on the streets of New Orleans, drawn into a cartoon by Bunny, which is great, you know. And so he had all this. All of his friends were like on the lookout for good conversations to overhear, and they'd report back to him, and he would draw it, you know. So my dad was part of that group. Bunny played drums. And so they would have music, you know, jam sessions and stuff like that. And I guess when Tips first became a thing, because my dad knew all the people, you know, he knew all the, he was just part of that scene. And so he wound up doing the regular Monday night here for years. And also because he was a good solo performer, you know, he had a good show, quality show. He was easy on, easy off. He wound up opening for everybody.
Yeah, one of the better things, or one of the more unique things about Tipitina's in the early days was that they were booking acts that seemingly didn't have a place to go. Like, they would hit some major cities in the South, but there wasn't any room that was necessarily comfortable having, you know, even just reggae music. To think that reggae was kind of like, no, we don't want that at our club. And this is one of the places that would invite that, or you know, proper Southern rock or roots music, as it were. There was, you know, places down the street like the Warehouse had the Allman Brothers. You know, there was Southern rock to be had, but there was a lot of niche acts that didn't have a place to go.
I mean, the old Tipitina's calendars are one of the greatest.
It's bananas
things.
to look at them. It's bananas.
It's bananas, if you will.
It's bananas. Especially since they were made by Bunny Matthews also.
Yeah, oh yeah. There's all kinds of little hidden messages and bizarro things. It reminds me a lot of the zaniness that Rory Danger has, you know, in spirit. I think my dad was very. That was one of his. He felt like he was right at home, kind of again. In
Rory,
that, you know,
to jump forward into the Rory Danger. The Rory Danger and the Danger Dangers are like rockabilly pirates. That's about as good as I can put a tag on it.
Yeah, I mean it's an art rock, I don't know, drama.
It's a show.
Drama rockabilly thing.
It's a show. But
anyway,
at those gigs here, there's a handful of tapes I know that you recently got your hands on in the past year.
Yeah, and
tell me a little bit about those tapes.
Well,
like
I'd known about, you know, I mean, I'd seen my dad's board tape collection, and there's everything from, I mean, I've been digging through his stuff since he passed away, and there's I think there's like a couple of hundred tapes, and they're not all from Tips, but there's a lot of early Tipitina's stuff, stuff with him solo, stuff where he's opening for, you know, whoever. There's like the farewell night, which was the night before we hit the road for 7 years.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great. It's a great performance. It's a great recording. Because he's a soloist, it's a good, you know, it's hard to get a soundboard recording of a band that sounds
back
good,
in the
because
late 70s, early 80s, the technology was difficult.
Well, and just
bulky and not clean.
You know, the stage volume doesn't mean, you know, makes for an awkward blend on a board tape sometimes.
A lot of
for
people
a band.
not of the industry probably don't realize that.
Right.
The amount of sound coming off the stage and going through the board are almost two different. The way you hear it,
right,
and the way that it's being piped to you are two different things.
So if you're at a show and you hear and you know the guitar is melting your face, and then you hear the board tape of it, and the guitar is really quiet.
Yeah, that just means the guitar player had his amp
because the guitar was too loud for the show. Anyway, because my dad was a soloist, is like guitar and vocal, so like the quality is pretty good.
But he got special guests.
Yeah, there's one in particular that
people would just show up.
Yeah, well, nobody worked on Monday nights. None of the there was no gigs on Monday nights, so his thing became a hangout for a lot of musicians.
Were just hanging out.
There were free red beans, so that's always a plus, you know.
Spaghetti and red beans, I think, was on Mondays.
And so one of the tapes, really the prized possession of this, the crowning jewel of these tapes is a full night of him with Cyril and Aaron Neville.
It's phenomenal,
and it's a Monday night in 1982, I think.
We gotta get that out to the world. I'm sure.
That's one that has in looking through my dad's collection, there's like 6 copies of it. So it was like that's one where he's like, I'm not losing this.
No. You do not want to lose that one. We need to move forward with.
And it's awesome. I mean, it's not all great. You know, you can definitely tell that they're kind of figuring it out as they go along.
They were not in a band
but
together,
they're all really good singers. I mean, that's something my dad, you know, he grew up, the first thing he did was learn how to sing harmony, and he sang really naturally. He's a natural singer, so he fit right at home with singing with, you know, Aaron and Cyril, who have been singing together their whole lives.
Yeah, they are phenomenal singers.
And you can tell that my dad and Cyril were buddies, and they had a rapport. And Aaron's kind of he was the sort of the special feature that night. I think that Cyril probably came and
coaxed
sat in
him on stage. Like,
well,
hey,
I think that Cyril sang with my dad from time to time on Mondays. You know, like he would stop by, and Aaron was like, this night Aaron showed up. You know.
Yeah.
And so the tape starts with just my dad and Aaron singing "In My Life" by the Beatles.
All right.
And it's incredible. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. It's amazing. And at the end of it, my dad says, "Is Cyril Neville around? Get your skinny ass up here." and then they do some.
He is the skinniest Neville brother.
The skinniest of all Nevilles. And then they do some Sam Cooke, and Ricky Castrillo actually shows up and plays guitar on some stuff.
Oh man.
And there's some stuff where you can, you know, like you can tell, like Aaron starts singing an R&B song that my dad has no idea what the chords are, you know, and so they fumble around awkwardly for a couple minutes, and then they go on to something else. You know, there's some of that on there, but when it's good, it's so good. And it's cool. It's really cool.
You've been talking about it for a while, and I can't wait to get a chance to hear it. We got to put that out there for the rest of the world to fall in love with, I'm sure. Another
Aaron plays guitar on it.
Does he? Oh man,
he says I'm playing guitar. I've never done this before. You know, it's interesting. Yeah,
that's great. Another musical family connection I know that you have. Not just Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes, but through your family, your parents. The Malones, as in Dave Malone from the Radiators. I'm told that you guys were quite close growing up. Yeah,
well, my dad and Dave were really great friends.
They were in a band together.
And to hear Dave talk, I've talked to Dave about it, about what, you know, like Dave was a really big fan of like Western and country music. You know, the old school, like Bob Wills Western stuff, and my dad also, you know, in addition to being a Bob Dylan nut, he's also a Hank Williams. Those are his number 1 and 2.
Okay,
and so they've really bonded over their love of like what Dave calls white soul music. Okay. You know, it's very soulful. It's just different kind of soulful. You know, and so they had a band. They had a band called Road Apple, and Reggie Scanlon was in that.
Also of the
Radiators, and Susie Malone, who was Dave's wife at the time. Dave Malone and I share a birthday as well.
Okay.
So when I was born, Dave was the first phone call that my dad made.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
This is the last time I'm calling you on your birthday.
Yeah.
Because now I have a son with this birthday.
Yeah. Which, incidentally, it happens to be August 29th, which is Katrina Day.
I was going to say that's
and
another thing. You have there's other famous people with that birthday. I think Michael Jackson has that birthday.
Yeah,
too,
Charlie Parker.
Charlie Parker, that's right.
That
is absolutely August 29th, 2005.
Yeah, I called Dave on that. I call him every year on our birthday, and I called him that day. Phones were still working.
Yeah.
And I left him a message, and I said, "Happy birthday, Dave. I got you a Category 5 hurricane for your birthday. Hope you're doing well." Click. And then the next day we saw how bad it was. I was like, "Ooh, that was a really bad message to leave." Anyway, so yeah, the Malones were and continue to be great friends.
And you've collaborated not just them back from 40 years ago, but to this day. You guys have done Whippersnappers and Chillins, I believe. Were you in the Chillins? You're in the Chillins.
I'd started the Chillins.
Okay,
yeah,
that
was another band, another one of my bands. Yeah, well. The Whippersnappers isn't any that's a different thing. That doesn't have, there's no Malones in the Whippersnappers.
I thought Darcy and Johnny sang in the Whippersnappers.
No, they've done shows with
maybe just like sat in on the Christmas show or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unofficial Whippersnappers, I think.
All right. That's fair. They're family, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely extended family for me, you know. I mean, I grew up listening to the Radiators and as much as any band, you know. And the Subdudes with Tommy Malone, and yeah, I go way back with Darcy. She hates when I say this, but I tell people that Darcy was the first girl I saw naked.
Oh yeah,
'cause we used to take baths together when we were like 6 months old.
Scandalous.
She always says, "Dre."
You heard it here first, everybody. You heard it here first.
Yeah, actually, I've told a lot of people that.
Okay.
Mostly just to embarrass her.
You heard it here again.
Yeah.
Let's zoom forward to, again, while we're still talking about history and your father, Rory Danger and the Dangers, where Spencer Bohren was the alter ego of Spike Danger.
Yeah.
Tell me the genesis of Rory Danger and the Dangers.
Well, so my dad was making a record, and Aurora Nealand was playing accordion on a song. So she was in the studio, and I was playing percussion on the song. So this would have been 09 or 010. 2010. 010?
010. There was a 0 before the 10. Might as well be 010. Or 09.
Yeah, at the end of the aughts.
Yeah.
My dad was making a record, and I remember Aurora was saying, she asked me, she's like, "I'm thinking about starting a rockabilly band. Would you be interested in being like she wanted,
ever been in a rock band before?
No. Well, she was in Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes. That's how I met her.
She was after Katrina.
After Katrina, she answered a Craigslist ad.
Mm-hmm.
and said, "Yeah, I play bari sax," because we were trying to replace Harry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And she did not play bari sax, but she was fearless and she played soprano sax. So, I mean, she picked up bari quickly enough, and she's a brilliant musician. So
yeah.
Anyway, so she, to my knowledge, that was the most rock and roll that she had played, was with Johnny Sketch for 4 months.
I was gonna say it was just a season,
was brief,
basically.
It was brief. But then she asked me about starting a rockabilly band, and she had been listening to Wanda Jackson,
a phenom.
And that was she's like, that's really cool, and that attitude and that the balls that Wanda Jackson
graced our stage
has.
a few times.
Yeah, I know. I've never been able to see her. I was out of town last time she was here.
A legend without a doubt.
She dated Elvis.
The rumor goes, yes.
She's just
she
badass.
Performed with Elvis.
She's just badass all around. And so Aurora,
she's a tiny lady too.
Yeah,
like she's so small and adorable. Yeah.
It's awesome. Aurora was really feeling that vibe, and she asked. She's like, "Would you want to start a rockabilly band with me?" Like, I don't know anything about rockabilly, but I want to. This is like, I'm drawn to this. So we started rehearsing, and my dad was absolutely in. I mean, when Aurora Nealon asks you if you want to do a music project with her, the answer is yes.
It doesn't matter
what
it is.
You're gonna come out of it with a better. I mean, she's incredible. She's at the very top of my list of creative, just inspiring people to be around and creative people to be around.
And I mean, just top to bottom, performance-wise, phenomenal. You put her in front of people, you're gonna get a real show.
Yeah, she's incredible. So we started this rockabilly thing, and the first gig was at Chaz Fest.
Okay.
And
might have been one of the first Chaz Fests. Then,
was, I suppose. Well, it wasn't the first one, but it was. We decided early on it would be alter egos, and so we each got our own alter ego. Mark.
You guys were no strangers to this before. With
no,
the Johnny
we weren't.
Sketches.
We weren't.
Johnny Sketch nicknames.
And so Aurora was Rory Danger, and to this day she will deny anything about. She's like, I've heard that I look like this person.
Like her.
Yeah, but I don't know what
I
you're
look
talking
a lot
about.
like some guy named Tank. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Brian.
I don't know who Brian is either, but that's fine.
So everybody got their own name, and my dad came up with Spike Danger.
Spike?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
He's had a couple of alter egos. He was also he had a band called Smokey Jim and the Sweet Potatoes.
He's got a phenomenal band name.
Which I was shopping at Dornax.
Gone Johnson.
Yeah. I was shopping at Dornax out in Metry, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a case of sweet potatoes that were Smokey Jim's sweet potatoes.
Oh, man.
This is like a couple of years ago, and I was like, I took a picture and I was like, busted, Dad. I know where you got the name from.
Not that clever after all.
He had a Hank Williams set, a full Hank Williams set that he would play under the name Slim Chance.
Okay. That's a good name.
There was a record that he was making when he had booked a gospel quartet to do the background vocals, and they all got sick. I think they were brothers. And they all got sick on the day of the recording, and he wasn't around for, that was the day that he had to do it. So he wound up recording all of the parts himself and crediting it to the Knott brothers, N-O-T-T.
Yeah.
So he's no stranger to the alter ego. And so Spike Danger, that, the alter ego just lets you do things that Spike Danger can do that Spencer Bohren would never be able to get away with,
I wouldn't.
Spencer Bohren is respectable. he has a reputation to uphold. And Spike Danger is
who knows what you get with Spike.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. So, and the same thing with, I mean, that's the whole idea behind alter egos,
Well, how did you guys put the band together? How did you know who you wanted to select for what?
I think Aurora picked most of it. I met most of the people in the band the first iteration at the first rehearsal, I didn't know Scott, the bass player, or Casey, who's a guitar player, Mark Pepe Pellegroso. He was actually originally.
I didn't write that down or reference that. Sorry.
He was actually originally just a hype man and co-front person with Aurora.
Yeah, he wasn't really.
He wasn't playing guitar.
Yeah.
So there was Casey, who is Bongo Danger.
Okay.
Because he's also our lead bongo player. There's Spike Danger, and then we had a third guitar player who's named Dan Cooper, who used to play here with Shot Down in Ecuador Jr. I don't know if you've seen them on any old posters.
I don't think so.
That was a band in the 80s.
I would remember that name.
That was a band in the 80s. They made it on like one of the Tips compilation CDs.
Okay. Oh, I wasn't living here at the time. Very few of those CDs still exist.
I have one somewhere.
Yeah,
somewhere.
There's very few of them around. I rarely have seen one.
Yeah. Well, he used to play in a honky tonk band that I was in called the Nudies, which were named after the nudie suits, which are like the fancy suits that you know, the fine stitching that all the old country guys would wear.
Yeah.
And Dan played pedal steel and Telecaster, and so I was like, he'll be perfect for the rockabilly band, you know, and he was great, but that was the only gig he did with us. I think he moved to France after that. And then
but luckily there was Spike Danger.
Well, yeah, Spike was there. The first gig we went from rehearsing in Aurora's living room, which was very cozy and low volume and unamplified, you know, low volume amplified, no microphones, you know.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, downbeat at Chaz Fest, we are loud as 3 guitars, you know, just an assault. And Scott's bass blew up, like the bridge slipped out from under his bass.
He plays the big upright bass.
Plays the upright bass, and he's not very nice to it.
No, he stands on it.
Stands on it, and anyway, the bridge blew up in the first song, and it was like, it was kind of a disaster. But man, we got some amazing photos, which you need if you're going to be a band.
Mm-hmm. Well, for first gig too.
For first gig,
that helps get the legend out there.
That's right.
There's obviously hundreds of people that were here for a gig that you guys played at Benefit here, where you had a 20-minute set, and you decided to play 20 songs in 20 minutes. Was that
well?
No, it was 40-second songs or 30-second.
We
songs?
did 1:17 seconds, I think, of as many songs as we could.
Yeah, there was a timer on the stage,
and a person with an air horn.
Yeah, and an air horn next to the stage when the timer hit 0.
The air horn would sound, and we would start the next song.
I've never seen anything quite like it. I've never seen a group of people
at
an expensive, like, not fancy, but like a higher end benefit to raise money for kids.
It was sold out. I mean, it's an event that sells out every year.
It was a sold out room, so it was full.
And it was full of non-locals.
Yeah, there's only a handful of
mostly folks from out of town for Jazz Fest, you know,
exactly.
for Jazz Fest, and that was
hilarious.
Here to see,
like, you know, they're here to see Galactic and Dumps the Funk and Trombone Shorty.
They're here to see all these
Dirty
bands play
Dozen.
like 3 of their most grooving songs, because you
they're
got a short set, so everybody does
20-30 minute sets.
And so that's where we were like, okay, how can we make this different, you know?
Yeah, how do we throw a wrench into this machine?
And that was kind of what the Dangers do anyway. Is like, okay, this is great. How do we mess this up and make people scratch their heads?
That's
you know?
why I said the Pirates of Rockabilly.
Right.
There's this thing that's going very well. How do we make it really bad and
I'll
fun
tell you
at the same time?
Nobody was more by the end of that set. Nobody was more frustrated with the constraints we had put on ourselves than everybody in the band.
No, because as soon as you start playing the song,
1:17 seconds in gets you almost to the payoff of the chorus every time. I think, and then there was like one song that is actually like a minute long or 1:10 long, and we got all the way through it, and we were like, yes,
we did it. All right, let's vamp for 7 seconds before we. It
was ridiculous.
But just every 1:17 screeching
hundreds
halt.
Of confused faces.
Exactly.
At the very end, there were like 15 people who came up to us outside at the end and were like, "That was amazing. That was good." Like, they got it, you know.
Exactly. I think that's what I loved the most about it, was because it was the most original idea I'd ever seen at that event before.
Man.
After years of working it, and it's always a great night, and it's always phenomenal musicians. But I've never seen anything more memorable happen, aside from the year I met Harry Shearer for the first time.
Oh yeah,
that was huge.
Yeah.
But to see the Rory Danger and the Dangers, play 20 songs in one short set.
Yeah,
I've never seen anything like it.
It was ridiculous. Because I mean, part of it. I mean, we've done that before too. We were nominated for an Offbeat Award, and we got invited to play at the awards, and so we actually we planned. Scott, the bass player, has a guy for everything, because he's like, oh yeah, I got a guy.
He plays with guys in the Russian mafia. Like,
right.
He's got everything. Yeah.
But he also, he's just well connected, and so we were like, how can we like treat the Offbeat Awards really ridiculous. So we're like, well, let's treat them like the Grammys, and like if only we could show up in a limo. And Scott's like, I got a limo guy.
I got a limo guy.
So we meet in the Bywater at Aurora's house, and we're waiting for Scott's limo guy to show up. And meanwhile, Scott is going around the corner of the bar and getting quad jams, is what he would call them, quadruple Jamesons.
Okay. Quad
jams. And so Scott's getting hammered, and the limo gets raining, and the limo guy is late and later. And then we get word that Aurora, who was nominated for Best Saxophonist, won the award.
She wasn't there?
She wasn't there because she was waiting on her limo, which is, if you know Aurora, she is the sweetest, most humble person, and but that storyline is so funny. So we finally were like, okay, well we can't wait on the limo anymore. We're gonna miss our set. So we drive over there and show up as Rory Danger and the Danger Dangers, and we see all these people that we know, because it's like the only night, it's one of the few nights in town when
it's all industry people.
Yeah, it's people that, and that's the only time we get to see each other, because we're always gigging, So we're kind of like acting like better, we're just playing the part, like all of us are, and it's really funny, and to us anyway, and we got up there and did our set, but we had also hired a couple of announcers and planned our own awards show. So we gave out awards for best shrimp po' boy. And we read the nominees, and Trombone Shorty won all of them, because
like he does.
He
wins every award. He's the best.
And it was pretty ridiculous. I mean, we kind of thumbed our nose at the whole awards thing at the awards.
Well, yeah, while you're being presented and gifted with awards.
Well, we didn't. We lost the awards.
You did lose?
But I think we had a very memorable set. Point being, that's sort of the MO of that band, is like, how can we take this and make it memorable? Because the bands, they get up there, and especially if you have a limited time frame, you're gonna get up there and you're gonna present you're gonna put your best foot forward. You're gonna present the best songs that you have, and that's what you do.
People ask me all the time who's my favorite band or who's played here, and I've seen I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands, of artists perform, and so many of them so talented. You really only remember the ones that are memorable, the ones that do something that are memorable. Like, I've seen bands that were not great bands, but they had a phenomenal something that they did on stage that was like, that was fun. That's why people go and see live music.
Yeah.
I think that's
the
kind
thing
of
about
the
the
big
Dangers.
separator.
The Dangers don't take themselves too seriously.
No.
It's the whole thing is just ridiculous. But the lineup is stacked. I mean, it's like, when that band is on, I'll put it up against any band.
Because they're all crushers.
It's a stellar band.
All crushers.
It's a bunch of music nerds, and it's just a shame that everybody's in a million other bands and we can't ever play together.
That's kind of the nature of the New Orleans music community, though. Like, I referenced this before one time in an interview. I believe Hank Staples is the one who said this about New Orleans music and New Orleans bands. It's New Orleans has one band, but 3,000 members, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just the way it goes.
Sure.
Everyone collaborates with everyone, and everyone has not the same background, but a similar, I don't know what the word is,
Well, and I think the Dangers are, there's a lot of us play in, like, Mark and I know where Mark's thinking. I know what he's thinking. I know where he's going with his solos. You've been
next to him for 20 years performing live.
Right. He's one of my best friends. Like, we've played music for a long time. And Aurora as well. I mean, I've played music on a whole different level with Aurora, and it's special when that band gets together, It's very exciting.
Well, not to put any kind of a dark turn on it at all. Are there plans to carry on with Rory Danger and the Danger Dangers?
We've been working on a second album for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And in little, when everybody's in town, it's like, okay, quick, book some studio,
time,
So we're sort of on the home stretch, but who knows? So we have a record, which I want to. It's also some of the last stuff that my dad recorded. So just purely from that aspect of it, I want to see it through.
Absolutely.
Also, it's there's some really cool music on it. You know, it's some really
the
wildly
first
creative.
album is phenomenal. It's you know, and it's got something that I like about an album. It's not that it tells a story necessarily, but it's one of those things that you can listen to start to finish with relative ease.
There's a sort of storyline, but it's just sort of a story. You know,
it's sort of a story. Like
nobody's more confused about any of the storylines than the band themselves. You know, I promise you. So the answer is yes. There is definitely a want. We should probably have some kind of eulogy show for Spike Danger. You know.
Well, again, it's not a common genre for New Orleans. So one thing that I like specifically about it is there's no one else in town that sounds like y'all.
Right.
Like there's other places around the country that have music similar. No one around here is really making anything like that.
Well,
so I
it's
think
like
art rock,
art-rock.
makes it special.
Art rock, theatrical rockabilly. You know, that's a
but
pretty
you're putting on a
niche.
show.
That's a pretty niche genre.
It's a show though.
Yeah.
Like just like how there's tons of bands and they perform.
Well, the bingo show.
The bingo show
You know?
was a show. It was an experience. Boyfriend
Right.
was a rap cabaret. Like
Right.
those are shows. There's something
Right.
to be said about going the extra mile. Even one of your band members, Sage Rouge, is in business. I
Right.
don't know that they're together anymore, but
They
it
have
was
a-
important for them that they put on a visual show.
They have a story
for
that
the
they're
audience.
presenting. You know, there's some bands that need more than just setting up and playing their songs.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, the songs will be tight, especially with
Right.
all these heavy hitters that are on the stage.
Yeah.
What else can you do though? How else do you
well,
bring it?
and with Aurora, that's always at the forefront. You know,
Are there any other bands that are out there right now that you see that are taking that extra step, that are going the extra mile to put on an actual performance instead of just playing a gig?
one of the bands that one of the shows that I've seen that does that on a very slick and professional level is Janelle Monae.
Okay.
I mean, she's a festival headliner, you know, like, and she manages to put on. She's got a whole storyline and character that she plays, and the show. It's not as much dramatic stuff and theatrical stuff as like it's almost 50-50 with Rory Danger. You know, like is it a band or is it a theater troupe?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not something that you see a lot. I don't
No,
think.
it's rare. I think that's one of the things that makes it special and unique.
Yeah.
And if it was the sort of thing that was your main gig that you had to do, it's a lot of heavy lifting.
Well, if we could get paid to do one gig a year, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like,
Talk to the Flaming Lips about how easy it is
Right.
to put on their show.
Right.
You know,
Right.
It's not easy. It's a lot of trucks. And
I
a lot
see
of
that
bodies.
they're putting a bubble on everybody in the audience.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like
Which is amazing.
exactly.
It's amazing.
They're going beyond.
It's amazing. Tank and the Bang has put on a show like they put on a. There's it's a show.
Yeah, that's a great example.
It is a show.
It's a great example.
Great show. They're
Phenomenal.
They're awesome.
Very
They're awesome.
talented, and I mean, look at how far they come. I remember their first gig here. You know,
Yeah.
it was.
They're
it was unique.
add them to the list of bands that opened for Johnny Sketch.
Yeah. When did they open for you? Where did they open
at
for
Seafood Fest. They played before us at Seafood
Okay.
Fest. Yeah, we have my next
you?
band
You guys
should
breed
my next
Grammy
band
nominees. That's
my
great.
next band will open for Johnny Sketch. It's a slingshot to stardom.
So let's roll back a little bit in time.
right.
Back to your youthful days. Growing up, you guys hit the road at 4
Yeah.
for about 7 years, and did you land back in New Orleans after the 7 years?
No, we actually settled out west in Colorado. So in those 7 years, my little brother was born. And my parents decided that 4 kids on the road was just ridiculous.
Is it though? You have a trailer. What's the big deal?
So, well, no, I mean it was a myriad of things. That time was just that it had run its course, you know.
Well, so something that you would think might happen, and that maybe you wouldn't think this would happen, but 4 kids basically being raised on the road would end up as musicians or carnies or gypsies.
Right.
You and, I mean, obviously you're a musician. Your sister does costume design, is that right?
My sister's she's the head of the costume department
That's
at the Minnesota Opera, which isn't costume design, but she you know it's an office job more than as much as anything.
Okay.
But it's also
It's in the art world, though.
It's in the art very much, and she oversees the whole department, so she knows she's definitely got artistic input on stuff.
Absolutely. But your brother, your older brother.
My older brother he runs a comics shop and does web design, and so he's very creative, very much creative.
Is he a musician also?
He's not.
He
talks about how
he played guitar. Or
he
something.
talks about how he can barely play the radio.
Okay, that's good.
But he's got a very good ear for music, and he listens to what I consider to be very good music.
Okay, that's fair.
My
what
little
about
brother,
baby brother.
My little brother is what my dad used to call the white collar sheep of the family.
Yeah,
he's a lawyer.
A lawyer.
Where
did they go wrong?
Well,
I can't believe
the
it.
thing
he
is
was homeschooled in an Airstream, and he ends up a tragic lawyer.
The thing is, he can play.
Can he?
Yeah,
Right.
he's got a very good ear. He can pick out a tune on the piano. He can play. My dad showed him a couple of things on the guitar, and he'll mess with it, and he knows when it's wrong. You know, he can figure it out. He's got music in him for sure.
But he ended up a lawyer.
You know,
he decided not to struggle like the rest of your family.
Right. So when we stopped traveling, part of it was because the family size was just too big to maintain
Totally
on the road.
Yeah.
There was, I think my older brother was ready to have some friends that were like that he didn't just see
on weekends, every couple of months.
Occasionally when we would be back in that town, you know, it was just time. So we settled in Colorado, in Fort Collins, where we wound up living 2 doors down from John Magny, who we lived next door to in New Orleans East when I was born.
It's a heavy coincidence.
Yeah, well, John's from Colorado, and the subdudes were kind of splitting their time between New Orleans and Colorado. And so John had moved back there at some point in the 80s, and in 91, I guess it was, we stopped traveling and settled in Colorado, which is where my parents met originally. They met in Boulder.
Okay.
So there's a lot of.
Was your mother a musician?
She was in high school. She played clarinet, but not.
But they didn't meet through music.
No.
Like that.
No. Well, actually, my mom was dating one of my dad's good friends, guitar player, and yeah, he had the crooked teeth from the guy. The guy
oh, wow.
socked him for that one.
I didn't mean to ask that. Sorry.
No, it's part of the whole history, you know.
All right.
I think it was worth taking the hit.
I think it was worth. I think everyone would agree. It's worth a punch in the face.
So we lived in Colorado for a couple of years, and then moved back to Wyoming.
Okay.
Which is where Casper. I have a lot of family out there. My grandfather had passed away, and so we moved out there to be close to my dad's mom. And it was at that point that my dad got sober when we were out there as well. And I think that was sort of cosmically, that was a big reason that we moved out there. You know, that our path led us there. Another big one was that there just so happened to be a concert pianist who was from Wyoming, and she had gone off to study at Juilliard and Eastman and like travel the world as a concert pianist. And she'd moved back to Wyoming at the same time to take care of her mom, who was on her way out. And I just started playing piano, and so it was a huge mentorship, you know, like having this lady is the reason that I play piano.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up as well, because I wanted to ask you about your earliest instrumentation. Piano was your first instrument, is that right?
No, actually, I was a guitar player. I was going to be a rock and roll guitar player until I was like 11 or 12, and that was because I saw the movie La Bamba.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps you've heard. And the soundtrack.
Richie Valens featuring LDP, the great Lou Diamond Phillips.
Oh man,
it doesn't get any better. For my money, LDP's the one.
I'll tell you what, that soundtrack is the one. That soundtrack was great.
Slow Slobos, though, right?
Slow Slobos,
yeah.
and that was you know, like we talked about earlier a little bit. I had an obsession with 50s rock and roll. I credit Los Lobos with giving me with making me want to play rock and roll music.
Well, I think I have it in a note somewhere about your father referencing your early days of playing guitar and picking up Eddie Cochran's Summertime Blues like it was nothing. You know?
Well, he liked to. He was
an
he was a storyteller.
Okay.
But I definitely Eddie Cochran, Richie Valens, Buddy Holly was my guy.
Yeah,
you know?
Buddy Holly. Yeah.
And then Los Lobos was really like the first guitar. I mean that soundtrack, the La Bamba soundtrack was.
Yeah,
it hit me at the right
huge.
age,
Yeah.
and so my dad got me a red Strat copy, you know, which I still have.
I was going to ask if you still have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when I also started listening to a lot of the Radiators, because my dad's like, okay, you like guitar. What's a better guitar band than your friends and family, the Radiators?
Between Uncle Dave and Camille.
Right. And then there was a jazz fest that Los Lobos was playing, and I was obsessed. I mean, I was obsessed with Los Lobos. Now I'm obsessed with them for totally different reasons. I think they make some of the best records. I think they use the studio better than any other artist out there.
Okay.
And they have for 30 years.
I mean, they put on a phenomenal show. We've had them here plenty of times.
No, I know. They borrowed my cymbals one time, and I was so stoked. I was so stoked. Jehu called me and was like, "Hey, they thought they wanted better cymbals than what we have here. Can you? What are you doing?"
We used to have kind of a crappy house kit.
Yeah. So
we have a phenomenal Gretsch kit. Well, I'll give a shout out to Gretsch for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they gave us a phenomenal, beautiful kit. Yeah.
I love playing that kit.
Yeah.
Anyway, Los Lobos, they were played at Jazz Fest, and my dad figured out he got the room number for David Hidalgo, called him and woke him up and and arranged and was like, you know, are you going to be out? I think they had played the day before. He's like, are you going to be out at the fairgrounds today? And Dave's like, who are you? You know, and I got this picture. I got a picture of me as an 8-year-old with a Stratocaster belt buckle.
Yeah.
That's left-handed because of the way the belt worked.
Yeah.
And Cesar Rosas is a lefty, the other guitar player in Los Lobos. So like it's me, my dad, David Hidalgo, and Cesar Rosas.
You're gonna have to send that to Nick so we can put
And
that on the
it's
show.
a Michael P. Smith photo.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's
and I'm like, you've never seen a bigger grin on your in your life. I'm just it's
those
backstage.
are your superheroes.
It's backstage at I think Jimmy Buffett was playing.
Wow.
And it's backstage and I'm just like, you know, this big stupid grin on my face. And these guys were so cool to me. You know, as a little kid, they were talking to me about guitar strings and you know, like, and Cesar's like, look, I like your belt buckle, man.
And you're what, 11, 12 years old, something like that?
8 or 9,
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
And I actually got that same picture with just me and the two of them outside of Tips. Derek Houston took the picture.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago when they played here. It's the night they borrowed my cymbals.
Yeah. That's phenomenal.
So anyway, yeah, guitar was
that was
definitely
your first instrument. Was guitar.
It was my first instrument. And then when we stopped traveling, we inherited a piano from my great grandmother, and I started plunking around on it a little bit. And then we had an exchange student come and stay with us.
I wanted to ask you about the German exchange student.
Yeah.
Also, I found a note about that.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear a story about that.
My folks hosted a German exchange student for a few weeks.
They sent you off to Germany?
No. I don't know what the exchange was, but that's this kid Michael came and stayed with us.
Still
and
keep up with him on Facebook or anything?
I don't. I really should. I really should find him.
Michael, if you're around, hit him up.
Yeah. Definitely. And he would come in and set up his music for Elise, Beethoven,
Yes.
every day for 3 weeks that he stayed with us.
He played it every day.
He played it every day, and he would, and I would just, and I didn't really, I plunked around on the piano, but that, you know, I didn't know anything about it.
No, just this box that lived in your house, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I knew what, you know, I knew what a piano was, and I knew what it was capable of, but
you didn't have any kind of training, or you
not
weren't
at that
playing
point.
it
No,
at all.
not at all. And I watched this guy play every day for 3 weeks, and then I saw where his hands went, and you know, and I kind of kept track of that, and I by the end of 3 weeks of him playing it every day, I knew it.
Wow.
Like I knew how it went, you know, and then once he left, I sat down and like plunked around and figured out a lot of it.
Was that the impetus to start getting lessons or
Yeah,
start pursuing
it was
that?
a little bit after that. My mom's got me lessons. I played by ear a lot initially, but after a certain point, like I couldn't get past certain things, and I needed to learn how to read music. because I wanted to tackle. I didn't want to do scales and the beginner. I was already playing Beethoven.
Why not?
And then I heard
my first song was Beethoven. What's the big deal?
It was. I mean, it was Beethoven, and it was. I was messing with Rhapsody in Blue, which I
want to ask you about Rhapsody in Blue as well. Sorry to jump forward a little bit off the German kid.
That's all right.
But at the age of 15 or 16?
16.
16? Tell me about this story.
Well, so again, this is because of I had this incredible teacher, this mentor. Janet Alquist was her name. She actually just passed. She passed away 2 months ago, maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That one hit me hard. That she was the first real musical mentor on.
Say outside of your own family with your father.
Yeah, absolutely.
The first person that you ever sought any kind of learning,
on a level of the piano is something that I've gone deeper into that repertoire, and I've spent more hours playing piano than anything else, and it's, I don't know, it was, she was very important in I think about her almost something that she taught me almost every time I play piano, So anyway, she guided me into playing the Rhapsody in Blue for real, and I played it with the Wyoming Symphony within 4 years of playing piano, really for the first time.
That's phenomenal.
I spent a lot of time at the piano.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't just happen. It's
I mean, I would be shocked if it did, because your ability on the piano is almost not unprecedented, but for the 50 or so people who just witnessed you out here on the sidewalk earlier this evening playing the piano on the truck, no sheet music, no nothing, just kicking out Chopin and Gershwin or whatever, throwing out everything and just having this catalog just in your head.
It's in my hands more than my head.
Is it?
Yeah. It's a lot of it's muscle memory. It's muscle memory. I mean, I think because I didn't learn scales and proper technique until way after the fact. I have this whole chunk of repertoire that I learned strictly on muscle memory. And if I make a mistake, I don't know where I am structurally in the song or in the piece. So I have to go back a couple of pages sometimes.
Oh, wow.
That's what I used to have to do. And now I have a much better understanding of the way music is put together, the theory aspect of it, I'm a college boy now.
Well, what is your formal education? Because I do know that you graduated from Loyola originally for an undergrad, but
I did not graduate from Loyola.
Graduate.
I dropped out of Loyola.
You're a dropout. Sorry.
I was on
piece of crap you are.
I was on the 15-year bachelor's degree program.
Okay. Well, you went to University of Wyoming too. Is that right?
I did a year at the university, not the University of Wyoming, Casper College.
Casper College. Well.
Harvard on the Hill. You haven't heard of it?
We've all heard of Harvard on the Hill, Casper College. What's the mascot again for Casper College?
The Thunderbird.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, my old man used to drive an '87 Thunderbird, brown, the good color brown.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so that was where where Janet Alquist was teaching. Well,
okay.
So that was the only reason.
That's what brought you out of high. Did you go to high school, or was that out of the?
I went to high school.
Okay.
I went to high school. Thank you very much. Went to high school in Wyoming and studied. That was really my piano, hardcore piano stuff was high school, junior high school, and into college. And then I got down here, and I actually moved back to Wyoming after we moved here to study. That's when I went to Casper College.
To study. Okay, yeah.
I wasn't quite ready. I knew that if I stayed here and tried to go to college here, it was just there was too many distractions,
But you went to high school here, right?
No, I went to high school in Wyoming.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, which really throws people for a loop because I was born here, so I'm from New Orleans. People say, "Oh yeah, well, okay, cool. Where'd you go to high school?"
So much time growing up here, though.
They ask the question, the inevitable. Where'd you go to high school?
Where'd you go to school, man? Where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in Natrona County High School in Casper, Wyoming, and they're like totally taken aback, no idea what to do with that information.
No, yeah.
Because New Orleans loves nothing more than New Orleans.
That's absolutely true.
It's in the best and worst of ways. It's awesome.
Absolutely. I could not have said that any better, actually. But
I digress.
Study at Loyola.
I wound up going to Loyola.
A degree.
Yeah, and I was doing piano performance, classical piano performance, and that's where I met I actually already knew before I started at Loyola. I already knew Mark and Harry and Dave, who I wound up starting Johnny Sketch with. Mm-hmm. They were all at Loyola already. Dave actually dropped out before I did. So
really,
yeah. Make sure you talk to him about that if you interview him.
Yeah, well, when we get Dave out here, for sure. Bunch of dropouts. I didn't realize you guys were such,
Well, and I took a couple years off after high school. So I was the same age or older than my bandmates, but they were all graduating, mm-hmm. and I was just getting rolling in college. So that was tough to deal with as a 21, 22-year-old. Is like,
but you did.
My friends are going
15
away.
Years later, you did.
I mean, I took a decade off and then went. Yeah, I finished. I definitely finished. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it too was that Johnny Sketch was starting to get some steam and momentum, and so it's like, well, this isn't where I need to be right now. So,
like we've mentioned plenty of times before, you played drums in Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes.
I do.
How did the drums start? How did you start playing the drums from guitar and piano? And is there another instrument somewhere in there that we're missing? Obviously, you never played the Peruvian pan flute. You're just a fan.
I did not play the Peruvian pan flute yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
You got any?
There's bound to be one somewhere. We must have one.
That's the good Peruvian
closet,
stuff. Those pan flutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, so is there any other instruments that you were playing?
I play a little bit of bass.
Well, I've seen you play bass, and no, I guess I haven't seen.
I did play bass
else.
With South Jones here on this stage.
Did you play bass with
I played bass on one song, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing you play bass with them.
Right there.
Okay. I believe you. I'm not doubting that. That's a good group of guys.
I love those guys.
Yeah, John Paul.
Yeah. Anyway, I had a little obsession with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones when I was in high school. I saw them live a couple of times, and my uncle was a bass player, and so I borrowed his bass and figured out some Victor Wooten tricks,
Oh, man,
but I would never in a million years consider myself a bass player,
But you can play bass, but...
Yeah, and again, the bass that Dave plays is actually mine. That
is
my
it really?
uncle,
That
my uncle,
one?
Yeah. Now it's got an alligator pick guard, an alligator skin pick guard.
Huh.
It had a leather pick guard forever, but Dave sweat through it, and then he caught an alligator last summer and had a pick guard made out of it,
right.
which is amazing.
For when I get Dave on this show, this program,
Gator
I'll have
Dave.
you write out a bunch of different questions for Electric Dave.
I guess I was playing guitar, and then we got a piano. I think it was when we were living in Colorado, and the Radiators came through, and I went to see them, and I saw them from the side of the stage, and my angle was looking at Frankie, and suddenly the guitars were like meaningless to me, Frank Bua.
Yeah.
And he gave me his drumsticks after the show. And my dad used to do gigs with Frank and Reggie. If he needed like a trio for gigs, he would have them as a trio. And he made a couple of records with them as the rhythm section too.
Yeah.
But so there was one record when we were living in Wyoming, and my dad flew to New Orleans to make a record. I think it was a present tense record that he made. And Frank and Reggie were the rhythm section. And my dad talked to Frank about, just talking about the family and whatever. And he said, "Oh yeah, my son Andre's playing drums. He loves drums." And so Frank gave me several like busted cymbals. Yeah. And like Zildjian cymbals and drumsticks. So some of my first pair of drumsticks were from Frank.
That's cool.
And my first, they were broken, but they were Zildjian. So my first real cymbals were from Frank as well. And he's not a super technical, like flashy drummer. So like I started to put together a drum kit about the same time. I was 12 or 13. And that was like an approachable, like I could play along with Radiator songs, it's not like,
Just learn to keep the beat.
It's not like, okay, here's Dream Theater, go, it's
musicians' music, that Dream Theater.
Yeah.
The great Pete Jones would agree.
Yeah. Well, so drums and piano were kind of at the same time, but I definitely went farther down the drum worm or the piano rabbit hole than the drums. But I did have a band in high school in Wyoming. It was a funk band.
Yeah.
Called the Groovy Boots. So the guitar player, it was a very similar situation to Johnny Sketch actually. We entered a battle of the bands which is where Johnny Sketch started. But before that, the Groovy Boots started with a Battle of the Bands entry, and with 2 rehearsals, we won. And part of that was because we dressed, we wore suits and berets and sunglasses.
Berets?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send. I've got some. We've got some.
Don't worry,
that
dude,
band.
Trust me. Down here, I have a line that just says costumes ? So.
This was not costume. This was a uniform. That's different.
Stage
it's different.
presence is,
right.
is the in parentheses.
Right.
So.
Well, so the guitar player and lead singer of this band was 12 at the time.
Okay.
It was it was high school and it was like there was like the little brother thing, and like it was I don't know it was a good band. But it was like a summertime band, because everybody would, like one of the guitar players would come up from Colorado and stay with his dad in the summer, and we would have a band. And the name was actually a quote from a misheard quote from the movie Shaft. There's a scene where Shaft is behind the bar and he's talking to his friend and he says, "Yeah, you see that girl over there, the one with the groovy boobs?" And our 12-year-old guitar player heard Groovy Boots.
Yeah.
And so that was the band name.
That's as good a name as any other.
And so one of the summers, that band wrote a song called "Cut You Sucka," which is still in the Johnny Sketch repertoire.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had heard that "Cut You Sucka," which was on your first album, Bandicoot.
Yeah.
Was not a Johnny Sketch song, that you had brought that over from high school.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous.
Well, it's a song that you guys don't play very often anymore.
Yeah.
And again, I guess we'll slide into more Johnny Sketch stuff right now. But it's one of those songs where I've seen it played, I don't know how many, tens, dozens of times over the past 18, 19 years. But I saw you play it one time at Blue Nile with Big Sam playing trombone.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like a song that I already heard 1,000 times on the CD before and seen you play it dozens of times live. And just for some reason, when I found out years after this that this is just a song that a bunch of high school kids wrote up.
Yeah. Well, it was. I think there was some of the old Conan O'Brien show was influenced in there because he had this character. I don't know if you remember Pimp Bot.
Yes.
With a high-powered modem and an aluminum scrotum. And he would say, "Allow me to introduce you to my business associate, Mr. Cut," and he'd whip out his little knife. So that was like the basis of the whole idea. It was like, I'm gonna cut you, sucker, and filtered through a bunch of kids in Wyoming. It was like it was ridiculous.
Was it basically the same incarnation of the song that Johnny Sketch has performed?
Yeah. It was the same. I tweaked a couple of lyrics that were like, I mean, the original has some things that reference like a conspiracy guy in Casper, Wyoming that like talks about black helicopters, the government helicopter,
all right,
like specific names that like have no reference here.
Might as well,
Yeah, but we played that. That was one of the first. Like I have a recording of our second gig, and at the Parkway Tavern.
Yeah,
which is now the Bulldog.
Okay.
Which is now the Bulldog on Canal.
The one on Canal. I was wondering.
And we played 2 verses of "Cut You Sucka" on that. Like that's it's been in the repertoire for the whole time. I mean, it was a song that was already there. That was part of it. It was like we're trying to figure out songs. Like, well, I got this. It's already a song.
Yeah, it's already a song.
We don't have to write it.
Yeah, you mentioned the Battle of the Bands when you guys were Loyola students. You weren't a Loyola. Were you in the music program at the time?
Yeah. I was. Okay. I wasn't in the orchestra, but I was a classical piano performance major.
Not playing percussion or drums or anything like
piano.
that.
I was going.
But
I was
they decided
going
to nominate you as the drummer.
We didn't have a keyboard player. I mean, I was already gigging in town too as a drummer. So like that was part of it. Was like I was already I'd been playing with All That.
All That is a phenom of the past for sure.
Yeah, I was the 15th drummer in All That. That building on what Hank Staples talks about. One of the lyrics in one of the songs is we're an 8-piece band with 58 cats.
For sure.
And All That was some of the best shows I ever saw, and also some of the worst shows I ever saw, depending on who was there. But anyway, I was already gigging with I was gigging with my dad sometimes, gigging with the Nudies, doing honky tonk stuff.
Yeah,
all on drums. And really, like I was really and still am pretty uncomfortable outside of the classical world on piano.
Really?
For the most part. I mean, I'm dabbling. You know, I've been doing stuff with South Jones, but like, I don't take solos. Like that's not, my brain doesn't work that way on piano. Keyboard stuff is I play classical music on piano. You know,
yeah,
like that's. I'm not an improviser on piano. So anyway, I wasn't even nominated as the drummer. It was like I was going to play drums in the band, you know, like I was already, that's what I was doing. That's what I was gigging.
Yeah.
On was drums.
So originally as Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes, was that the original band title that you guys came up with for that Battle of the Bands? Yeah.
We were called Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes.
And it was you, Dave, Mark, and Harry, just the four of you?
Yep.
Okay.
And my girlfriend at the time was in the music business program, and she put together the Battle of the Bands.
Okay.
And it was the first.
It wasn't rigged, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
We entered almost as like a, well, she's got to let us in, you know?
Yeah.
Like almost just kind of give her. Actually, I'll send you this. Our friend Miriam sent me the flyer for the original Battle of the Bands.
Yeah?
Yeah, like a couple weeks ago.
Was there anyone else that was competing that day that you remember that is still
World Leader Pretend?
Yeah. Oh, man, I remember those guys. I remember I was working on a radio station at the time, and they had a little 5-song CD that they had, you know, that was at the radio station, and we were playing one or two songs, not in regular rotation, but it was kind of, hey, this is what new alternative rock sounds like coming from New Orleans.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily New Orleans music, obviously. It was rock and roll. It wasn't anything that you could
very
really
heavily
put a
like
title on.
Radiohead influenced.
Well, like, Radiohead and REM specifically, obviously for the title of the band.
Well, so they were on the bill.
They played the Today Show and then like seemingly disappeared.
They were signed to Warner Brothers.
Yeah, they
and
were
then they
supposed
toured,
to be the next big
They
thing.
toured hard for like 2 or 3 years, and then they put out they recorded a second record, and it was rejected by the label, and they disappeared.
Yeah, and well, luckily, I guess for the drummer, he got to marry Therese Anderson, Art, right?
Arthur, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the drummer in that band for a minute.
Were you really?
And then I was replaced by Arthur, and then I played keyboards for a minute in that band.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we did a couple of shows here where it was when we were all at Loyola, where it was 4 sets of music. It was Johnny Sketch, World Leader Pretend, Johnny Sketch, World Leader Pretend, or maybe World Leader Pretend first. I don't remember, but and at the end of one of them, actually, we were doing Revolution by the Beatles.
All right.
And Joe Cool wandered up on stage and started singing with us. I'll never forget that. It was awesome. It was awesome. Yeah. Joe Cool was actually one of my first gigs in New Orleans.
What do you mean? Like him performing or you performing?
I played with Joe Cool opening for Bobby Blue Bland at
Really?
the House of Blues when I was like 19 and green as
Wow.
Because my dad would, when we first moved back here, I was 18, and my dad would drive me up. You know, we had the Chevy still, the red and white car, so he would drive me up and drop me off back here at the back door and say, "Hey, Joe, here's my kid," you know, and so I would get in to see whatever shows.
For people who don't know, Joe Cool was, aside from being a phenomenal gospel
all right.
But actually, Ricky Castrillo, I'm told, is the one who coined the phrase "all right."
Well, I would venture to say that Joe Cool
made it famous.
Joe started every sentence with that, so
it's not a mistake why I opened this podcast by saying, this
no,
program
it's that sentence
saying "all right."
That's those two. That word has probably been said more times on this stage than any other specific word.
It's why I believe we're calling the show "All Right." Welcome.
No,
to
that's awesome.
Penis.
Anyway, Joe. When I moved back, Joe heard through my dad who they're old friends, you know, and they heard that I played drums, and so he called me. It's like, oh, he plays drums. All right, he can play with me. Yeah. Which okay, cool.
Like, cool. What songs do you play?
So there was no rehearsal. And it turned out that Josh Paxton was also on this gig. We found out. We
very interesting.
And without knowing each other, you know, at the time, it's a big gospel band playing in front of a sold-out House of Blues.
Yeah.
For opening for Bobby Blue Bland.
That's wild.
You know, with no rehearsal, and like the whole band is trying to give me cues at the same time, and I'm like holding on for dear life, and I don't know what I'm doing. It was awesome. But I digress.
Yeah, totally. Jumping back to the Battle of the Bands again.
Blair Jimma was another one that was there. She's solo like folk, real interesting voice. I think she had a song on like the Girls or one of those HBO shows. You know,
it doesn't ring a bell specifically.
I don't know. Anyway, there were a couple. There was some talent on that.
It's
Battle of the Bands.
There's a crop of musicians. Maybe it's just because it's in the same age group as me that it's significant. That is from late '90s, early 2000s specifically. That is absolutely kind of formed what modern New Orleans music is, in my opinion. The first show was the Battle of the Bands.
Right.
It was a 3-song set.
Yep.
Tell me about We Got the Big Dicks. And
well,
what other songs were on there besides We Got the Big Dicks? Which is a great song.
I don't know if it's a great song.
It's a great song.
I try to make sure that
it's a great song.
As a person that calls most of the songs on our set lists for the last however many years,
it's a rarity.
I try to make sure that we play it once a year.
Yeah, I'd say about once a year I hear that song. Yeah.
And Anyway, so that was one of the early grooves that we messed around with, and that was phonetically that came out as a lyric. You know?
Well, you guys were trying to not necessarily make a statement, but stand out with this first gig for this Battle of the Bands.
I don't even remember if it was
Battle of the Bands amongst college kids that are all in the music program.
Well, you got to remember too that
crazy.
You got to remember too that one of the judges for this was John Groh.
Was he really?
Yeah, John Groh voted for Johnny Sketch.
Hell yes.
And
later adding French horn to one of your albums.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. We finally paid him back.
Yeah. He's a future member of the program for sure.
I don't really remember where that lyric popped out of. I mean,
it's a basic song overall.
It's
but it's
really
fun,
basic,
it's
and it's fun, it's funky, and it's a ridiculous lyric. And we wrote this ridiculous rap that is pretty tasteless. It was tasteless then. It's even more tasteless now. You know.
No doubt.
But it goes by fast and whatever. You know, we can fudge the words and it's really just a vessel for jamming. You know, like for funky jamming, and that's what we did.
Do you remember what the other 2 songs were that night?
I think we played Curb.
Okay.
Which has nothing to do with the name. Has nothing to do with the song title. There was a lyric at some point that was "kick 'em to the curb," so that was the shorthand for it. But, and maybe You Heard Me.
So You Heard Me, and not that again,
maybe.
I love you guys. It wasn't a massive hit, but it was definitely the first song you guys had on an album specifically that was like something that was kind of being heard all over town.
Well, it was something that
very New Orleans.
It's something that everybody, you hear people say that all the time in New Orleans. You heard me? But yeah,
the song itself was just very much just like this funky groove. It's
a funky groove.
The lyrics are nothing but like local colloquialisms.
Right,
basically,
right. It's very here, you know, in New Orleans.
Couldn't be written anywhere else.
It could be written somewhere else, but it doesn't mean as much.
It wouldn't have been written anywhere else.
Yeah. So those were the first 3 songs, the 3 songs that we did, and we costumed. You know, we wanted to make sure that like we didn't same thing as with Rory Danger. Like we didn't want to just come out and play songs. You know, we wanted to put on a show, so we wore costumes. I wore this silver fireman's like fireproof. It was a fireman's suit. But it's like silver, like the really heavy silver fireproof stuff. Yeah. And we wrapped it. We spent way too much time wrapping that in rope lights. Yeah. And I had a sombrero on with lights, like Christmas lights woven into it. And I had an extension cord duct taped to my back, and all this was plugged in. So we walked out there. It was so hot. Yeah. And we played
easy to play.
We played like a 15-minute set, and I was dehydrated. I felt like it was damn near killed me. But we won. So, and the first prize was a headlining night at the Howlin' Wolf 2 weeks later. So we went from being like, well, maybe my girlfriend will have us in her Battle of the Bands if we put together a song.
To headlining a gig.
To like, we have to cover like 90 minutes of material. Mm-hmm. And so we did that by bullshitting our way through, cover songs and costume changes, and we handed out 150 kazoos to the audience and played.
Great idea.
And played. Most of the audience was our music school nerd friends. So it was like it was the most in tune 150 kazoos I've ever heard.
All right, that's fair.
And we did. I'll never forget. We did Buenos Tardes Amigos by Ween, which has this guitar solo that's like. da-da-dong, da-da-dong, boom, boom. Like really super dramatic and like single line. And so it was just Mark playing that, and I played that on the guitar solo line on a toy piano.
All right.
And we had 150 kazoos singing it along with us,
wow.
buzzing it along with us. It was awesome. And I'm sure the memory of it is more awesome than it actually ever was. But
good thing there's not a recording of that show, right?
But we did these shows that were ridiculous. We put on a good show, and we were a bunch of music school nerds, so we were fairly proficient at our instruments.
Well, you yourself refer to Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes as New Orleans' premier eclectic funk rock band.
Yeah.
Would you have always categorized yourself that way? It wasn't specifically like that?
No, I think we wanted to be a funk band. I mean, we used to all go see Galactic together.
Yeah.
And that was we wanted to be like Galactic. We wanted to be a funk band.
Galactic, they're a band from here, is that right?
Yeah. They're moderately successful and I mean, one of our big early influences was Galactic. I mean, I used to as a drummer moving to New Orleans was like, it's Mecca. There's so many great drummers.
Yeah, there's so many I mean, even just the Shannon Powell, like it goes on and on.
It goes. It's been going on forever, but
and you can literally track the lineage. Stanton, Johnny Vidocq,
sure. No,
it just goes.
It's a direct line,
yeah.
and so I would go out and see these bands play and like study, just like watch them, and go home and try to steal some of their. Which is what they all did to each other as well.
That's
like
kind of how you learn, and that's where you find your own voice through.
And so Stanton was definitely, the early recordings of Johnny Sketch. I'm trying. Like I watched. It was like, okay, he leads with that hand on that lick, and so figure that out. And like I'm playing that fill all over the place.
Well, something to stroke your ego a little bit because you were playing piano outside earlier, and Stanton Moore was in attendance.
Yeah,
and. It was funny because I made note of, hey, do all drummers play piano? And he kind of looked back at me like, no, I can't do that. Never.
Well,
I mean, again, attributing to how good of a drummer you are, but like phenomenal classical piano that I didn't even know that you played piano for however many years that I had been listening to Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes until I got to know you later on and be like, watch you perform, 15, 20-minute piece. No sheet music, no nothing, and it's some of the most intricate piano playing I'd ever heard. What's it like for someone like Josh Paxton, who plays piano, who's in Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes, to think that he might not be the best piano player in the band that he's the piano player
apples
for?
And oranges. Apples and oranges. I can't do anything that Josh does.
He's I don't want to. Josh, you're awesome. Don't worry.
It's apples and oranges. It's a very different thing. But from a drum thing, like I would with Johnny Sketch specifically, like I would want to. I was definitely like straight up stealing Stanton licks,
wow.
on the early days for sure. And that was the big influence. I mean, we would go see George Porter most of the time here. I mean, the number of shows that Mark and Dave and Harry and I had been to in this building is it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's more than any other place that the four of us have been in.
I don't doubt that for a second. In the early days, there was just the four of you. When did you decide to add the horns?
Harry always played horn. Harry was the secret weapon. He played violin, harmonica, and bari sax. Mm-hmm. And so bari sax is a lonely instrument if it's the only horn.
It's the only one, yeah.
And so we got our friend Nick Voltz in on trumpet. Mm-hmm. And that was
AKA?
Johnny Fashion.
Johnny Fashion.
He was Johnny Fashion long before Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes were a thing, though.
All right.
Because he always looks sharp. He dresses the part.
He's I met him a couple of times, definitely in the early years.
Yeah, he's now the trumpet professor at Loyola. So he's he's Dr. Voltz.
Was he
Nick Voltz.
teaching at was it Southeastern?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I did know
on the
that
North Shore.
For some reason. I don't know why I knew that.
Yeah, so
but now at Loyola.
Now he's at Loyola. Yeah, I think he's got tenure too. He's
well done.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I'm with no small part in due to
again used to play with Johnny Sketch. So the horn line definitely came together fairly quickly. I mean he was more like a guest, like we'll have trumpet on 4 songs because that's all that we had written for it, in the early days. And then like bari sax is way down low and trumpet's way up high, so like we need something in the middle, so we got a tenor sax, So the early songs were because we had Harry, we were able to do some stuff with horns and then some stuff that was more like just straight up rock and roll.
Well, there are a lot of songs that have the violin and horns, and I think and harmonica.
There's not a lot of songs that have both violin and horns because Harry was part of the horn section. So there's like Sherm has violin and horns.
Yeah.
But usually we would do like some covers that we do have both. But but usually it would, like when Harry was in the band, it would be Harry was on stage the whole time. So like if he was playing horn, he was part of the section. And otherwise he was, more often than not, we would kick the horns off stage for a few songs and do.
But in those early days, there was 2 other horn players with you when you're performing. You had Johnny Fashion and Johnny Hitman.
And Johnny Hitman.
Yeah.
Before Johnny Hitman, we had Johnny Badass.
Johnny Badass?
Yeah, he's actually the player he plays on Bandicoot.
I was going to say, is he the one that's on Bandicoot?
He's on Bandicoot.
And let me cut you off again. What's a Bandicoot?
That's all I really need.
Yeah, all you need is a Bandicoot.
So
the first album, for those who don't know, the first album is entitled Bandicoot. Which
is the title track of that song. It's a 10 to 12 minute, depending on how out there we go, jam song.
But I've seen
with
you
one
light
lyric
the stage on fire with it.
There's one lyric, two lyrics, because it goes gospel at the end.
Line phrase.
All I really need is just a Bandicoot. And so we had the line, and at the time we were all smoking American Spirit cigarettes.
Okay.
And at the time, instead of like Camel Cash or whatever, they had endangered species cards, so you could feel good about like,
if you smoke these, like you're in the Sierra Club.
You're helping the endangered animals. And so the day we wrote that song, somebody pulled the Bandicoot, the Bilby, which is the rabbit-eared bandicoot. That was the card. And
Out of Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was the right number of syllables, and that's it. Like that's why all you really need is just a Bandicoot. So it's syllabically worked.
Yeah, thank God that you happen to be smoking American Spirits back then.
Yeah, and that's all we were smoking.
Yeah, for sure. Those early years, though, if I'm not mistaken, you guys were practicing at home, and according to Mark, I feel like he's the one who told me this, that you guys were playing and you were making good music, but there was something missing, but you ended up, crossing paths with someone who you had already crossed paths with in Camille Beaudoin, who kind of helped you guys take that next step into, at least for Mark, for his playing, kind of stepping up onto how you can jam on stage.
Well,
was there any kind of like, hey, we're just putting out some rock songs that are funky, or funk songs that rock a little bit, and how do you make that next step into, not being a straightforward jam band, because I don't necessarily like that title.
Right. It's too all-encompassing.
Yeah, it's a fake title for a genre that people can't think of anything real for.
Right.
It's just what you say about the Dead or Fish or something,
Or any other band. Anyway, well, yeah. So, as far as, I can definitely see how that's Mark's perspective on having Camille come in. Well, maybe that's just for him
specifically, and might not be the right question for you.
For years, Mark was the only chordal instrument in the band. We didn't have a keyboard. We only had one guitar. And so it's guitar, bass, drums, horns. And so every time there's a chord played, it's on the guitar.
Yeah.
And so when Mark plays a solo, the bottom kind of drops out, or like the meat of the song, like the chord
no more
drops
rhythm
out.
Guitar, yeah.
That's why every band has a keyboard.
Yeah.
And that's why, which is precisely why we didn't want a keyboard, because everybody has a keyboard. And
we'll get into
and
you guys
so
having keyboards later.
We would have different people come in and sit in, and Camille was so good. Camille's been in a 2-guitar band for so long. I mean, he just plays so well, and he listens so well, and will find interesting parts that aren't what the other guitar is playing. And so it just gave Mark the total freedom to take his hands off the guitar and do nothing if he wanted for the first time in in 8 years or however long we'd been a band at that point. And the same thing happened when we had a keyboard player sit in.
Well, he's a classically all you guys were classically trained musicians.
Yeah.
and he was trained in cello.
Yeah.
In the early years, he was not playing cello with Johnny Sketch.
Right. We didn't have an electric cello.
No.
Until after Harry was no longer in the band.
He wasn't in the band, and then you guys were missing a singing instrument, I guess. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely took a little while to adjust once Harry stepped down because we'd always had a violin and we'd always had a third horn, so you can't replace that with one person necessarily. So for a while we replaced it with Aurora on saxophone and this guy Carl from Florida. He answered another Craigslist ad kind of thing. That was all the rage right after Katrina, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I definitely I want to talk to you about post Katrina.
Yeah, and he was in the band for 6 months, and then he went into drug rehab.
Oh.
And like on the eve of a tour. So suddenly we were in Colorado with no violin. And that was a huge part of our set was the violin, and that was part of our sound, and we just had to like start adjusting immediately,
Well, the violin, was one of the things that helped Bandicoot kind of stand out apart from other funk bands. Like no funk band has ever had a violin that I can recall.
Right. I mean, Harry wrote or co-wrote most of the stuff on Bandicoot. He was there's a couple of eras of Johnny Sketch and there's Harry.
More than half the songs are instrumental.
Right. Right. I mean, Harry was there's the Harry years and then there's the post Harry years. I think we've gotten a little more focused. There's good and bad about both, Like I think Harry, when he plays with us now, he'll guest with us or we'll do a whole show with him sometimes. Just his vibe and his attitude and the fire that he brings out of everybody is like those early days.
Yeah,
it's because it's 100% because of the way he approaches music and being on stage with this band. Not to say that it was loose. But it was just fearless, He doesn't get hung up on well, what if it goes wrong,
No,
sometimes it does.
But
whatever, it's live
through and through. Just like I said about you being the prototype of what a musician is and should be. He's another one of those people that I believe the same thing about him as well. Yeah, like he's not concerned with. Not that you don't look cool, but like he's not concerned with looking cool. Like it's what is this going to sound like?
Right.
He gigs
he and I
almost
have
7 nights a week.
He and I have a duo. I don't know if you know this.
I do know this.
Tender Moments with Harry and André.
I absolutely know this. It's in the dossier.
Yes.
Don't worry.
Yes. Yeah. We need to trademark that so nobody else takes that name.
It's perfect for brunch. That's for sure.
Right.